Once again, folks, good evening to you, and thanks for tuning into the Sanjubaba show. Really appreciate that. I did receive a lot of phone calls from you. Thank you much again, and I will answer that back to you soon. I really enjoy the positiveness that you are sharing with me, and really I need those kickbacks because it's important for me to make sure that I'm doing my job right and I'm getting the right kind of personality in the studios. And as I've already mentioned to you earlier, that if you do have somebody that you think would need some voices that needs to be heard over here in the city of Pocatello and in the state, please let me know. And you know my number, it's 226-6024. Give me a call and we'll connect in this. Once again, as promised, we do have a great personality today again in the studios, and I'm really fortunate to have him. I knew this gentleman for quite some time now in the city, worked with him in the past, and I'm really glad that he's back again in the action. We have got our mayor's election coming up this November 5th. And our past mayor, Roger Chase, is back with us today. He's running the elections again. And Roger Chase, thank you so very much for coming into the studios this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the chance to come on your show. I enjoy watching it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, let's get back in the questions very quick. And we have got a very short time. And I know you have tons to answer and tons to share with our people in Pocatello. So what makes you run again for mayor?
Well, I became very worried about the direction the city was going. Mayor Vlad has done some good things, but as I started looking at the numbers and I had concerns about the direction the city's going, and as I talked to people in the community, they encouraged me to run, and about a year and a half ago I made that determination that I would look at it, and about a year ago I decided to run again to see if we can do some good things in the town.
What are the major concerns that you have?
Well, the number one concern I always have is jobs, and there's some statistics that I like to talk about, or I don't like to talk about them, but that I think really made me jump into the race, and those have to do with what's happening with our workforce. Our workforce is shrinking. We don't have as many people working. Currently, we have the highest unemployment rate in the state of Idaho at 7.8% of the 10 largest cities, and the average wage this last year in Pocatello went down over $1,000, and figures like that really concern me.
According to Mayor Blair, the present mayor of Pocatello, he says that we have increased 6.5%.
Well, you know, Mayor Vlad and I disagree with that. You know, the numbers I use come from the Idaho Department of Labor.
Okay.
And those are the numbers that businesses use when they look at the town, and those are the numbers that most of the statisticians and economists use. And the reason they use those is because those numbers are consistent. You can fabricate any numbers that you want, but when companies come in to see what they want to do in Pocatello, the numbers they use are the numbers I use, and those numbers reflect that. Well, just for instance, the workforce, when Mayor Vlad took office, was at 27,057 people, and the day it's down to 26,072 people. That's not a good thing for us. And the wages last year, from between 2011 and 2012, went from 33,845 to 32,805, a loss of $1,000. Those numbers worry me, and so as I look at that, we need to find a way to turn that economy around, and I think I have the experience and the connections to do that.
What do you think that Mayor Blair has not done to bring in more businesses in this city that you might accomplish that hole that he could not fill it?
Well, I think number one, you know, one of the things that I've done the last 4 years is my consulting firm, and my consulting firm does work throughout the region, and so I still have those connections to bring people in to the community. I know the leaders, I know the business leaders. I also understand a very important principle that as mayor, you need to use the experts you have in town. You know, most of the jobs you create in Pocatello come from the private sector. And that's very important to make sure you give the private sector credit for that, and to make sure that you work with those experts. Some of the companies that I work with have been very instrumental in bringing companies here. I mean, ATCO was Earl Swift's efforts to bring ATCO here is one of the people that I work with. And you look at some of the things we brought in the past, we always tried to let the private sector take the lead on that. When you want to go out and bring retail businesses to Pocatello, when we brought in Costco and Lowe's and Bed Bath & Beyond and all those businesses that we brought in, Chili's, The private sector went out and found those companies for us, and that's the experts that I'll use, is making sure that the private sector's out there taking the lead with the retail business, because they're the experts. And then as a mayor, we'll give them a lending hand. Well, we'll help them, but at the end of the day, their business plans have to work for Pocatello.
You know, Mayor Chase, you did work very, very closely with, as you had mentioned, Chili's, and then you have got in the big company that you have just named. I forgot.
Costco, Lowe's.
Costco.
Yeah.
Yes, and the city really appreciates that. On the other side, you've seen Mayor Blair has worked very hard to get Allstate back in the city of Pocatello and Chubbuck. And that's a huge organization to come in and get introduced in the city. And they have gotten a lot of jobs. They've given a lot of jobs for our community people. Is there anything that you are thinking that you might be able to work in your next 4 years term that you can bring in some more big corporations to the city?
Well, I continue to do work with some of the private sector people like
who's in the pipeline right now that you're thinking?
Well, right now in the pipeline, some of the things that I think that we really need to do is, number one, we need to set some goals out there of what type of companies particularly fit the mold in our region. Certainly we're going to emphasize work with the medical facilities. Our hospital here, Fort Neff Medical Center, is just an outstanding asset for the community. We want to make sure, number one, that we retain the companies we have and make sure that they're successful. Then we're going to go out and look for companies in the energy-related businesses. You know, things like ATCO, what they do, they provide services up in Canada for the mining industry up there. And so we need to get back to those basics and say, what companies can we recruit? Energy-related companies are important to us in this community. And so we'll do things like that. You know, in my consulting business, one of the things that I've done is work with economic development. I've had the opportunity to bring 2 new facilities to Bingham County and doing work up there. A factory that's going to move into Shelley. It's going to employ about 200 people. And then we worked with Glanvia Cheese. So they bought the old Satori cheese plant. So I'll continue to work with those connections I have statewide and bring companies like that to the town. So
when you're working as a consultant, yes, you did mention you've got these companies, but I see that you're always working with other counties together. You have brought in Bonneville County, Bannock County, as well as Bingham County together to work in. For example, you've got the hospital, Bingham Hospital in Pocatello. That was a big talk in the city. Now, I see the merits and demerits in that. What is your take on that?
Well, I think when you go out and talk about economic development in Eastern Idaho, you need to market it as a region. As a region, we have so many things to offer. We have great things to offer in Pocatello. But when you offer our region, number one, you also have a community of 250 to 300,000 people. When you look at medical care, you have our great hospital, Fort Neff Medical Center here, which has that heart center, that cancer center, works with the smaller hospitals in the region. You have a nonprofit hospital in Blackfoot that has outstanding abilities. And then you have a hospital in Idaho Falls. And so when you go out and recruit, you can say, Mr. Jones, your company, we can meet all the medical needs you have, and you have options here, different options to look at. When you go out and talk about educational opportunities, you bring in BYU Idaho, and you talk about Idaho State University, and you talk about Eastern Idaho Technical College. Then all of a sudden, our economic team really becomes a large metropolitan economic team, and yet we retain all those differences between Pocatello and Blackfoot and Idaho Falls and Rexburg and American Falls. It gives people lots of opportunities to do it. Sure. It's critical to recruit as a region and to support the region. You know, the other night, Mayor Vlad, when we were debating, insinuated that somehow the work that I did for Bingham Hospital was detrimental to Pocatello, and I don't believe that. I believe that we need to go out and market our entire region. And what's good for Pocatello is good for Blackfoot, and what's good for Blackfoot is good for Pocatello. And companies like mine that do work regionally, we should support companies that go out and help in the regional area.
So do you think, Mayor Chase, that the city of Pocatello is going to agree with you that yes, Bingham and Bannock Development, they should work together and we should bring in the business together, and you are a city mayor? And I think our concentration is how is Mayor Chase going to bring in more jobs in the city of Pocatello without shouldering himself with Bingham or Bonneville County? And our jobs numbers, as you have mentioned already, has gone down. How will we grow them up? Our mom and pops are shrinking. How can we bring in more mom and pop jobs in the city of Pocatello? What are you going to do on that?
Well, there's a couple, 3 things we need to do on that. I think, again, number one, we start with the companies here and make sure that they're successful. That's critical to our future needs. We need to make sure that Fort Neff Medical Center is viable. We need to make sure that the peoples out at Gateway West are viable. Make sure those companies are solid. Then again, you go out and try to find companies that fit the niche of your community, to cluster them around Idaho State University and the research that we can do at Idaho State University. Companies that make sense for them to be in our region because of the geographic location we have, so it's easy to transport their materials there. Companies that need a lot of power. we have very cheap power in Idaho. So you market those things specifically that we can bring in Pocatello, add into that the quality of living things, and you present that package that makes us very attractive and very competitive with other companies. But again, you need to find companies whose business plan works our city, and that's something that we were successful at while I was mayor, and we can continue to be successful like that at that in Pocatello today.
So your vision is basically the region, get the region together.
Well, I think my vision is that Pocatello needs to do everything it can to grow itself, but also that you need to work within that capacity of regional development, because a person that lives in Idaho Falls can come to Pocatello and work, and we have people that do that, and vice versa. The other thing that I think is so critical, when we talk about the wages going down, I work with several developers in town, and I know one of the things that happens to us when people look at the numbers, and again, they use the numbers from the state of Idaho, they see the wages going down and they see the workforce going down, and also that makes it really tough for them to bring in their store, particularly on the commercial side in our community, because they say the numbers aren't there. We have to, again, reinvigorate our business market here in town, and again, I believe that starts with the companies right here in Pocatello first. Let's make sure the Farm Bureau, Allstate, and Farmers Insurance are successful in Pocatello. Let's make sure the hospital's successful. Let's make sure ON's successful. You know, one of the great things we did while I was mayor of ON is we made sure that they had a facility for their engineers, because we knew if their engineers were here in Pocatello, it'd be harder for them to move that plant to Gresham, Oregon, and then to talk about the workforce and how our people are low-cost producers. We can sell Pocatello, and the companies that are here are the companies that probably have the best flags to wave about us.
Sure. I think we have seen a pure growth also for the last couple of years now. Winco coming in the new establishment, which has closed for quite some time now, and I was pretty concerned about that area, because whether we are ever going to see anything in that, it just felt like a bad karma place. Nobody wanted to take their property, and God bless Winco came in, and now we have got Mountain Bank come in, and then I believe Carl's Jr. has
Carl's
signed
Jr.
up.
is going to go in.
So those are the positive signs that we are looking towards the city, which is growing, I believe.
Well,
and I think
correct.
we should appreciate that what it is growing.
Well, and we do, and I think you understand the situation of that's where Costco wanted to go, and at that time the financing didn't work, and some things happened, so that worked up, and Winco made that move down there. It was a good business move for them, and that's why, again, I say, really support the private sector there. So they moved down from a store, and then Ridley's was able to move up into that new store, and that's a good thing to make sure we keep our businesses here, and that's very important to the community. And I think all mayors in all cities strive to do that, to make sure that you keep your businesses that are here happy, and again, you try to go out and find those good paying jobs.
In a couple of different campaigns of yours, recent campaigns, I've heard numerous times, several times, that the present mayor has used a lot of expenses in the city office, and his budget planning was not right. And we have got a pretty good deficit in the city of Pocatello, I believe, if I have understood right. What did you mean by that? What do you think that he has done wrong, that he has hired a lot of people in the city of Pocatello, in the city office in the last 4 years? What could you have done differently to stop that?
Well, I think everybody looks at the budgets I had. We were tight with our budgets, and I think it's very important we do everything we can to keep taxes down in the community. And there's a need for your taxes, and what we need to spend, we need to spend. But when I left office, one of the things that I talked about, we were in a position because of the new growth that had come to Pocatello, important of hospital becoming a private hospital versus a public. But we had about $2 million in additional revenue that was available to the city over the next few years. That'd be permanent increases in money, and it's not by raising taxes, it was that new things came on the tax rolls. I would have done different. I wouldn't have spent that entire $2 million as Brian did. I would have taken $1 million out of half of that money, and we would have lowered taxes literally in town, because I still think the biggest impediment we have, one of the biggest impediments we have, are the high property taxes. That's particularly true for homeowners, people who own small businesses. They don't get those great big deductions. And so that's one thing I would have done different. I'd have been tighter with budgets, and I was tight with budgets at the city. 6 of the 8 years I was mayor, that mill levy went down, and I'll make sure we continue to keep that mill levy in check. You also have to be very wise in how you grow city government. If you need some jobs, then you should fill them, but government has grown faster under Brian than it did under me. I think the figures I saw in the years that I was mayor, we increased the city by 17 employees, and I think Brian's increased it by over 30. Now, some of those we voted on for the ambulance district and stuff, and I'm sure that Brian could justify each of those jobs, but I was a little tighter with money than Brian is, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, you have to understand that we're getting less money from the state and less money from the federal government, and so the challenge always is bigger for Pocatello. Where do you find the tax revenue from? Especially in our town, when so many of our industries are exempt, At the end of the day, when you raise taxes, the small homeowners and the small business people are the people that get hurt the worst, and I'm committed to keep those tax rates going up as slow as we can.
So now that you say that you do not agree very much with the budget, I would not call it a misuse, a budget not properly used in the right direction. When you are given a second chance to come in as a mayor, what would you do to fix it? That the budget is, do you think we're already at a deficit right now?
Well, I'm not saying that the budget's been misused. I'm just saying I'm tighter with budgets, and so, you know, maybe where Brian would buy 4 things, I would buy 2,
okay,
and say we've got to get by with it. I think the council, and I think all city councils that we've had in the city have worked with tight budgets because of our situation.
We always had questions in our police department that we do not have enough police force. Now we have exactly the amount that we need, right? Or do we have more? I think we have exactly enough police officers in the city of Pocatello right now to cover the city needs. Do you think that was a wrong move?
Well, I think our police department does a good job with that. I mean, you have to look at that. We hired police officers when I was there. Again, there's going to be days when you don't have enough police officers and enough firemen,
sure,
and you have to find that balance there. Each of those positions that Brian felt, I'm sure he had a good reason for it. In my administration, I'll look at each of those positions when they come up, and every year they ask you for more positions, and you just have to make that judgment call. What can you get by with? Just as the private sector's had to be tighter and find better ways to do things, that's going to be my #1 solution. Before we add new employees, we're going to find a way to see if we can make it work, within our system. And then if we need to add people, then we'll find a way to add people. But I'm always going to be tight with the number of people we have. There's always a need for police officers certain times of the day, and we're undermanned. A tough job. But at the end of the day, there's a limit to what the taxpayers can pay. And so each of those jobs I'd look at differently and see what we need and what we don't need.
While your office in 8 years, Mayor Chase, you worked very hard to get Hoku over here.
That's right.
And you worked very closely with them. Unfortunately, they had to close. What is your take on that?
Well, #1, it was a sad day when they had to close, and that's sad because there were people that had jobs out there that they had committed to work for Hoku, and they certainly lost their jobs. And I'm one that believes that, you know, when you talk about numbers, one of the numbers you should talk about when we see high unemployment rates and when we see wages going down is that affects your neighbors and your friends, and all of us know people that are struggling. Now, Hoku itself was an effort. If that opportunity came again at a company like that, I'd go after them again, and I was proud of the effort we put forth. And
you think you would go after them again?
If a company comes like that again, because those opportunities are so far and few between. That was a company that came in here, brought to us by the governor's office, brought to us by Bannock Development, had great potential to bring other companies with it if it were located here. When you look at the assets that brought to the community, even while that was being built, it was a tremendous economic boom to the city. I mean, 500 people working out there on construction at a time when the recession hit was very important to this community, just keeping some paychecks going. The payroll out there was tens of millions of dollars in Pocatello, just what it added to the community. The city was very careful in what we did of Hoku, as you well know, because we set up our incentive package so they had to be up and running before the city put any money in it beyond the land that we've purchased. And today, there was a great letter in the paper about that the other day, and I think other people pointed that out. The asset that's left there for the city is worth much more than our investment there, and it gives us a great opportunity to develop that site in the future. We have power, gas, sewer lines there today. We have an electrical upgrade that can bring 100 megawatts of power to that location that's worth $30+ million. I think $37 million, the worth of that. And so I think on the appraisal today, that land's worth more like $40 million than the $1 million that we bought it for. So at the end of the day, there's a positive that we can redevelop that site. It was sad that we lost it, but the city was protected. The city came out well in that. It did some good things for the town. And when opportunities like that come, I mean, I was proud of the effort that we put together as a community, Pocatello, to bring that here, because we recruited against, it came down between Singapore, Honolulu, and Pocatello, and they chose Pocatello. And that says a lot for the team that we can do. And we can attract world-class businesses here. And I think you have to take those chances. I mean, you just were talking about bringing companies here. What would you have done? Have you gone after Hoku, or would you have said no, that they shouldn't come?
Oh, definitely I would have.
And so I think that's something that you have to talk about when you talk about companies like that. You got to see if they got good business plans, and if it works, it does. Nobody knew what was going to happen to Polysilicon.
But I think we have just missed the boat in between their 5 year. How long has they been here? Since 2006, I believe. So 4, 6, 8, 9 years. In the 9 years, I think we should have had a continuous discussion with them so that we couldn't have lost them. Somehow we lost. There's so much we have put as far as energy level, Yes, the city has got very lucky because they do have the property, and we might get the money back by selling it or re-establishing some other company over there. But to find somebody else, Mayor Chase, really, it's some work again. How long did it take for you to get Hoku over here? It must have taken almost over 4 years for you to work this whole deal.
Well, actually, Hoku came
together. You started in 2004, I believe. In 2006,
yeah.
they came in.
It took us a good effort. I've actually met with a couple companies that are interested in that site, and so there's opportunities to start talks again on bringing something there. But it was a good decision for the city, and I think that's important to realize that at the end of the day, you've got to be aggressive when you go out and look for companies to come here if you're going to bring jobs here, because everybody in the nation was going after those guys, and we were the ones that landed them here.
One reason
why.
One
thing I should say too about that too. Again, the plan was solid. What happened again? People forget the price of polysilicon just totally dropped. I mean, it went from being worth, and these numbers are not the exact numbers, but from say $200 an ounce down to $2 or $3 an ounce, and that's what really hurt Hoku. Is just the price of polysilicon dropped, and it just didn't cash flow. I mean, and then there were several plants like that that closed in the polysilicon industry.
I followed their stock very closely since the very first day they came in, and it was a fluctuation like you couldn't believe it.
That's right.
Every day there was a huge fluctuation. So that concerned me when I saw that I had some stock from Hoku, and I lost every bit of it. But the fluctuation was very, 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 very high.
Well, it was, and when you do stuff like that, that's why the city, we set up those incentives there, but banks make the decision to loan them money. J.H. Kelly made the decision to build it, and the people bought stock, that was their decision, and we don't have much control over that as a city, but it's sad to see that it didn't work. There's a sad side to that, but at the end of the day, we had our concerns with Hoku, and that's why we set it up the way we did, so that the city's funds wouldn't be committed to Hoku unless they were up and running. And then they'd get a little bit every year as they ran to help them. One
thing that Mayor Chase thinks, that you lost the 2009 elections for one reason. What could that reason be?
I did not campaign hard, I think, was one reason. I thought that I could win that election. And
you took it for granted?
I took it for granted, and maybe there was a silver lining in that, because to get back into the private sector, I can see some things that we need to do better as a city. We need to make sure City Hall's a very business-friendly place. We need to make sure that we go out there and we get our permits turned over in an expedient manner. I know we're meeting with some of the contractors. There's concerns about what can we do to make that process a little more business friendly, and so we'll try to do some things like that. I think that at the end of the day, you have to be positive when you sell Pocatello. You've got to get out there and make decisions that are wise for the town. I think one of the great advantages I bring over Brian is the broad-based connections and knowledge that I have that not only has to do with the city, but with issues such as water, with understanding such things as what happens at the state and how it affects Pocatello. And I think those are things that are very critical when you're a mayor, that you can't make mistakes. I mean, one of the things Brian keeps trying to tell the people of Pocatello is that Allstate starts their people out at $16, $18 an hour. Anybody that works at Allstate can tell you they start them out at $12 an hour. As a mayor, you need to know that. You need to know what the companies in your town pay, and don't somehow just throw a number out of the sky that makes it sound good. You need to talk about the reality. 12 hours. We're very happy that Allstate's here, but they don't pay $16 an hour, and we need to find companies that pay 16, 18, and 20 bucks an hour so families can be
we need to find those companies to come in over here.
We need to do that.
And we need to see what we can do to get the peasant rate go a little bit higher so our people can sustain and live a little bit more comfortably than they can.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Another quick question for you. You have just mentioned that, yes, a city friendly with the mom and pops. I think that's very much required for the mom and pop businesses. Everybody in this town, when you walk around, when you talk about them, they are worried about the city before they start a business. Why so?
Well, I think, number one, it starts with the high property tax rate we have, and companies like Union Pacific Railroad get a lot of tax exemptions, and we love Union Pacific Railroad, but the railroad, for instance, pays a very small portion of their properties taxable. If you're starting up, like when I had my grocery store, I didn't get any exemptions for my grocery store, and so I had to pay a lot of taxes, a higher percentage of taxes than Union Pacific Railroad did by a large margin. When I start a company like my consulting firm, you want to be in a town that makes you feel welcome and says, we'd love to see you come here and be a regional company that works across the region, and we need to encourage small businesses like that. Small businesses really create a majority of your jobs.
Absolutely.
For small businesses to be successful, though, you need to have those companies that pay a wage so that there's more spendable income. And when you see the wages dropping in Pocatello, the average wage, that makes it tougher on small businesses to succeed because, as you well know, there's less people that can come to your restaurant, for instance. Instead of going out and spending $30 for a meal, they may be in a position they can only spend $10 for a meal, and so that hurts your restaurant. Instead of buying a new appliance or a new car, they have to think twice about that. And so for small businesses to succeed and our private businesses, you need to have that good spendable income. And so that's another really important thing we have to work on to make sure that the town's friendly and helps our small businesses survive and does what we can to make them successful.
What does Roger Chase think? Why would Roger Chase believe that the city of Pocatello is going to bring him back as a mayor?
Well, I think there's a couple things that are really separate me from Brian. Number one, I understand our success is about all of us, that when we work together. Brian's been touting lately that, for instance, an example of that is that I'm the guy that put the connector together. And that's so far from the truth. I mean, let's talk about Mayor Peter Engstad and Evan Frazier and that city council back then that got the original money for the connector. And then Greg Anderson came in and did the hardest work in his administration to get that connector built. And Greg had to go through all the design work and all the issues with the tribe and so forth, did the hard work. Then when I became mayor, we went out and raised the rest of the money and finished that stuff. And then Brian makes a claim like, well, that project never had any traction, and I'm the guy that finished it. Brian had a little help work on to finish that connector, but when Brian walked into office, that connector was ready to move forward. We had to just finish up the last little issue with FEMA, and it moved forward. And in fact, if it wouldn't have been for the city council's efforts, we nearly lost our funding, and the city council stepped up when Brian wouldn't meet with a couple people, and we were able to get that project to go forward. And so I think that's one of the big differences between Brian and me. I don't get on a pedestal and say, I did this and I did this. I know our greatest successes in Pocatello come when we work together. And I think when you look at bringing companies like Allstate here, we had a great team. Robert Chambers, Ginny Gilliam, and Greg Lanning. Those guys have all left under Brian's administration. If you want to be successful in Pocatello, no, they left after Brian became mayor. And you can conclude why they left. But at the end of the day, it's so important to understand we are successful when we work together. It gets back to the region. When we work as a region, we're more successful. When we work as a city, look what we did with Brooklyn's Playground. That was the town getting together and making that work. Our greatest successes come when we work together. And when one person thinks it's all about them, our town's not successful. It's successful.
I've got 2 minutes. One big thing that Mayor Chase is going to do as soon as if he is welcomed back and if he's elected back as a mayor, come November 5th, what will you change in your first year and what will you change in your first 4 years?
Well, the first thing that we're going to do, and I'm mayor, and I've made a commitment that we're going to get a group of people together, a fairly large group of people together, and within 100 days, we're going to come up with the ideas what we need to do to turn around the town. It's not going to be ideas that just come from Mayor Chase. They're going to be ideas that come from the community, business leaders, private citizens. That's the number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to step in and we're going to make sure that everybody's on board and we define what are our strengths and make sure that we remind ourselves of our goals every year of where we're going to go. Within 4 years, again, I want to make sure that this city's growing. I'm going to emphasize, one of the things I'm going to emphasize that we've lost track of, we need to do a better job of property maintenance in this community. I'm going to put more funds from the city in the help of property maintenance. We've got to do a better job taking care of our city. First appearances look great. I'm going to continue to support over the next 4 years groups like the Greenway, the zoo, and these groups that do so much for our town and make sure that they get the credit due to them and the support that they get that they need to make them successful. Those are the things that I'm going to work on.
Folks, half an hour is really a very short term to talk to ex-Mayor Chase over here and understand what exactly he's going to do for the city in his coming 4 years if he does get elected on the 5th of November. We are looking forward for these great elections coming up. And I would love for you guys to please make sure you come on over and vote for the best candidate you think you should have as a leader of the city. With that, thank you so very much for tuning into the Sanjubaba Show. We'll catch you back in 2 weeks once again with another great personality. Till then, take care.